With all of the games EA has released throughout the years, there's been some good ones and some bad ones. Naturally, you don't get to the size that EA is without having some good ones like Dead Space, Madden, and Battlefield, and more. But EA definitely has had some duds throughout the years as well, and they are pretty terrible. Welcome everybody to Trending10, Nemo here, and today we're going to be counting down 10 of the worst EA games ever released. To be eligible for this list, a game simply has to be developed or published by Electronic Arts. If EA's name is on it, it's eligible for this list. Now, starting this one off at the number 10 spot, we have Star Wars Battlefront 2 in 2017. Alright, we'll go ahead and get this one knocked out of the way early. Battlefront 2 was released recently to scathing reviews from both critics and fans for its half-baked gameplay, lackluster campaign, and disgusting reliance on microtransactions and its pay-to-win models that you would find in a free-to-play multiplayer game or something that's, on your phone. The 2015 Battlefront wasn't received well by fans either, so EA knew that they'd have to bring the big guns for the sequel. And at first it looked like that was actually going to happen, as the initial trailers for the game were pretty promising. Unfortunately, the more we learned about this game, the worse things actually started to look. Aside from the progression system and the multiplayer being completely ripped out of a locked behind RNG loot box, the game was an insane grind for those who weren't willing to throw money at the game they already dropped a minimum of $60 for. Plus, the campaign was very short and it wasn't even finished at launch, with EA claiming that the ending was going to be patched in a little after the release. And that's not even taking into the account that the countless bugs and glitches it contained. Fans were furious at EA's treatment of such a beloved series, and CEO Bob Iger of Disney was forced to personally contact EA in order to get them to snap out of it. Although their snapping out is only temporary, as they have stated that the microtransactions will be coming back to the game once they are reworked, which knowing EA means they're not actually willing to change anything. Thank you for ruining yet another beloved franchise of mine, EA. Number 9, we have Mass Effect Andromeda. Okay, is Andromeda a bad game? No. But is Andromeda a good game? No. Andromeda is easily the worst thing to ever come out with a Mass Effect name on it, and it definitely angered a lot of fans of the series. Andromeda was written by a team who didn't know much about the Mass Effect universe and developed by a team with little to no experience in making games, and it clearly shows. The writing is awful, the game is very ugly, and extremely buggy for that matter. The story goes nowhere, and there is so little added to the Mass Effect universe that you have to wonder why the game was released at all. Oh, that's right, money! Number 8, we have The Sims 4. The most recent entry in the long-running franchise was definitely a letdown for fans and gamers everywhere. The Sims had been running strong since the first game was released in 2000 and was made famous by its heavily customizable gameplay and interactive world, allowing you to live out a second life in a world that you have full control over. The Sims 4, however, elected to do away with much of what made the Sims franchise so fun in the first place, and instead decided to ship a simple, bland, and empty game for the core $60 and lock the rest of the experience behind various paywalls and expansion packs. The saddest part of this is that when you look at all of the Sims 4, including all of the DLC, you still don't have much of total content as previous games in the franchise. And that's not even taking into account the countless bugs, glitches, and unfavorable changes to the gameplay. Number 7, we have Goldeneye Rogue Agent. Goldeneye 007 is easily one of the greatest FPS games of all time, and it's easily one of the most important and influential console games ever released, proving that multiplayer shooters had a place in the console market. Players were pretty excited when it was announced that Goldeneye was getting a follow-up over 7 years after the original launched. However, EA had other plans for this 007 game. Goldeneye Rogue Agent is a train wreck of a game, and it almost had nothing to do with the first game at all. In fact, the ties to the first game are so clearly shoved in there for no other reason than to just get away with the Goldeneye in the title so they wouldn't get in trouble for false advertising. The action is generic, the story is lame, and does nothing but remind you of all of the better times you had playing the original. Number 6, we have Dungeon Keeper 2014. Dungeon Keeper is a legendary series of strategy games, with the first one released all the way back in 1997, and since then having 2 sequels, an MMORPG based on the universe, and then a reboot in 2014. Unfortunately, the series is best remembered for the atrocious reboot developed by Mythic Entertainment and published by EA in 2014 for the iOS and Android operating systems. Dungeon Keeper 2014 is the quintessential example of how not to do a mobile game. There were countless paywalls left and right, essentially making the game unplayable if you didn't just throw your wallet at it during the play session. Plus, pretty much everything that made the original game so great was completely erased. No dark humor, the characters were just redesigned to be cartoonish and unthreatening, and the entire thing was just a sad attempt in cashing in on the legendary franchise with loyal fans. Number 5, we have SimCity in 2013. It can be hard to reboot a series that's as long running and famous as SimCity, but EA decided that it was time for a makeover in 2013, and the result was a total catastrophe. SimCity 2013 launched with an always online policy that ended up resulting in an almost identical scenario that Diablo 3 experienced just a year earlier. Countless players were locked out of the game due to EA's servers not being fit to handle that high number, and even if you tried to play without an online connection, the game wouldn't even start. EA tried to fix things by removing much of the always online DRM, but that was only the beginning. After players were finally able to get into the game, they quickly found out how buggy and seemingly unfinished it was, as it was difficult to do anything without issues, and the game would constantly delete your progress, which discouraged you from really trying to do anything. If you want a good SimCity experience, stay away from the 2013 reboot, play SimCity 4 instead, or any of the other games in the series. Number 4, we have Buggy. When rhythm games first started to take off on consoles, many companies started to try and cash in on that success. While many of them, like Guitar Hero and various DDR games, were great, there were others that were just absolutely awful, and Buggy is perhaps one of the worst of the bunch. Released in 2007, Buggy was a hybrid of singing and dancing games, allowing the player to essentially play it like a karaoke game, or just like Dance Dance clone, both of which were horribly put together and full of bugs. The Wii version of the game was the worst of them all, featuring a metronome that didn't even match up with the music, which caused confusion by players. Do you follow the song, or do you follow the beat of the song, or the beat of the metronome? Number 3, we have Madden NFL Football. I'm sure you guys are all aware of the Madden series. Some of the games in the franchise are better than others, with some of them being pretty bad, but none of them are quite as bad as the 2011 release of Madden NFL Football for the Nintendo 3DS. This was an attempt to bring the success of the series to handheld systems, but it failed so miserably that it just really solidified why Madden will always be a console game. The game was extremely simple and easy regardless of what difficulty you're playing on, and there is no online multiplayer to speak of, eliminating much of the reason why people play Madden games in the first place. If you can't play with friends, why get a Madden game? This full-price game was more of a demo than anything else, and perhaps is the worst example of EA Sports doing the absolute bare minimum while still charging as much as they can get away with. Number 2, we have the Simpsons Wrestling. This is a game that could have been pretty fun. The Simpsons and wrestling seem to go well together, given the slapstick moments of the show and how easily you can turn a wrestling game into a comedic experience. However, what happened was the furthest thing from comedic or even remotely fun. Released for the PS1 in 2001, The Simpsons Wrestling featured gameplay that was more like a beat-em-up than a wrestling game, and that's not really a good thing either. The game was hammered for its ugly visuals, terrible controls, and extremely unbalanced roster, which killed all chances of it being a competitive game. At the number 1 spot, speaking of the Simpsons games with awful action sports themes, we have the Simpsons Skateboarding at the number 1 spot, which released in 2002 for the PlayStation 2, and was clearly just an attempt to replicate the success of Tony Hawk Pro Skater series. While the game does deserve some credit for the amount of content, since each character has over 40 unique moves, that's really the only good thing I can say about it. The graphics were terrible, the controls were bad, and despite each character having over 40 moves, hardly any of those moves were actual skateboard tricks, making the theme of the game seem pointless and out of place. Upon its release, several critics questioned if the game was bad on purpose, with Andrew Reiner of Game Informer stating that he thought that the developers were simply trying to win the Worst Game of the Year award. You never know, that might actually have been the case. But yeah guys, that pretty much wraps it up with this video. Let me know which one on this list was your least favorite game by Electronic Arts. If you guys could do us a favor, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn your post notifications on, that'd be amazing. And until next time, this has been Nemo from Trending10, and I will talk to you guys on the next one.